Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bottom bum bum bottom ba da 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 ba da
You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
And I'm Brad Gullickson.
And each month we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. And in this episode, I am Bane. I could kill you, but death would only end your agony and silence your shame. Instead, I will simply break you in our Creator Corner. We're talking to Dream Team Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta about Absolute Batman from DC Comics.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into these two conversations with these creators. We have some big surprises in store for you regarding this series. But before we do that, Lisa, we got to talk about what just happened at the grocery store. Lisa and I went for a walk.
Yeah.
It's lovely here in Virginia. Many wonderful paths in Reston to investigate. We hung out by a lake. We watched the geese. We listened to the birds. We communicated with all the other wonderful neighbors that passed us by. Of course, we built up a thirst as a result. We had to go to the grocery store across the street to get a Diet Coke. That is Lisa's preferred thirst quencher.
Yeah, it's a treat. Like, generally, for a while, I was, like, really hooked on Diet Coke, where it was, like, a lifestyle.
Yeah, when we got married, we had to break you.
Yeah, it was bad news. It was bad news. But now it's a nice treat every once in a while when you're out to get a frosty, chilled Diet Coke, but today there was a hurdle.
Well, so we had multiple things that we had to get, but we didn't want to spend all our time at the grocery store because we wanted to get back to the podcast table and record this intro and outro for this epic episode. So, I went and I got, what did I get? I got some oat milk. I got some oranges, and I was expecting Lisa to come back with the Diet Cokes. And Lisa came back with nothing.
My hands were empty.
Well, where's the Diet Cokes, Lisa? And then Lisa said,
I have a hard time drinking a Diet Coke that has somebody else's name on it. I couldn't find one. I couldn't find one that either had no name or had my name on it.
So maybe you are aware, maybe you're not aware, but right now, like on Coke and Diet Coke, you share a Coke. There people's names on it. Like I go to the fridge and I look for Brad, I look for Lisa. I never find Brad, I never find Lisa, and then I just get whomever. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. But Lisa comes at me and says she can't drink from Sarah.
I don't want to be sucking on John.
Yeah, which, I understand because John's your brother.
That's right.
I wouldn't drink the John Coke myself.
That's right. And so what I ultimately decided to do was to get a Coca-Cola Zero Orange Vanilla.
Which has no name on it.
Which has no name on it.
Yeah.
Which
and I was like,
appreciate.
well, this is I could not believe we were having this conversation at the grocery store because I found it so silly. But then Lisa's like, well, which one are you going to get? And I was holding two, and I had Wyatt and Sarah in my hand. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get Wyatt.
So this is the thing. So you go in there, you open the fridge, and all that's left, there was Sarah and a bunch of men's names. Yeah. And so you act like it doesn't matter what name is on the Diet Coke. Yeah, but I'm imagining every straight dude opening up that fridge and going, well, I'm not drinking Christopher, so I'm going to take Lisa, and now I don't have a Diet Coke.
Well, so right now here I'm at the podcast table, and I have Sarah.
Yeah,
and
this is not SpawnCon. Could you imagine?
Oh, I would love
if we were
Diet
sponsored
Coke.
by Coca-Cola.
We would love you to sponsor us because we love Diet Coke. But I'm drinking from a very wet and cold Sarah, and it's delicious. She's delicious.
Oh, crispy.
Are we insane, listeners?
Yeah. Does anybody else find themselves actually drinking way less Diet Coke? And they have ones with compliments on them. I would drink one that says goat.
Like words of affirmation.
Yeah, but those ones apparently are only in like the boxes or whatever. I never see those in the wild. So I'm just drinking cherry Coke or
I honestly look, I've drunk from many names, and I'm sure I've picked every kind of name
I'm
out
sure
of
you
that
haven't.
fridge because
every female
you
name.
have the problem with Diet Cokes. I don't have that problem. I can drink a Diet Coke whenever I want, and I do, but I don't do it in front of you because I know it would cause you to go back on the wagon or off the wagon of Diet Coke, and we can't have that happen.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I've drunk some Wyatts, I've drunk some Johns. I know I just have not drunk a Brad or a Lisa because I've been looking.
Yeah. I mean, I know that Lisa is not like a super rare name, but it's just like wild to see Paige in there. I think I've met one Paige, 2 Pages in my entire life.
I'm sure a lot of you are going to come out of this conversation with a lot of comments and questions regarding Absolute Batman and Absolute Bane and Nick Dragotta and Scott Snyder.
But what I really want to know is, do you drink a Diet Coke with someone else's name on it?
We need to know. Our socials, Blue Sky at CBCC Podcast.
Is anybody
Instagram,
as weird
all
as
that
me?
stuff. So that's it. I think we got to move on. We got to move on to Absolute Batman. Today is FOC for the 9th issue in that series. That comic will eventually come out on June 11th. And it's the issue that's going to introduce the Abomination himself, Bane, a character that I adore.
Why Bane?
Well, Bane is tied to my early comic book reading experience. I grew up a Marvel zombie, but thanks to the death of Superman, which happened a year before Nightfall, I moved on over to DC Comics. And through the death of Superman and in the buildup of Nightfall, I started buying back issues because I needed to track the entire path that led to both of these events. And just this idea that, the Dark Knight could be broken by a relatively new character, actually not a relatively new character, an extremely new character. Bane first appeared in Batman Vengeance of Bane #1, published in January of 1993, created by Chuck Dixon, Doug Monk, and Graham Nolan. And he was designed to be like the doomsday for Batman. And the Nightfall storyline was like so compelling as a kid. Bane smashes open Arkham Asylum and lets loose all of Batman's rogues galleries, and then it became this process of just watching each rogue take a little chunk out of Batman until he was so weak he couldn't possibly stand up against Bane, and then Bane took advantage and broke his back. And just like with the death of Superman, the hype around the Nightfall storyline was intense. It was a story that wasn't just being spoken of in the comic book shops, it was being spoken of in the schoolyards, in the classrooms. It was on television. You would see pieces on Entertainment Tonight or your local news. It was a big deal when Batman was replaced by Azrael. I'm a sucker for an event.
I have no sentimental attachment to Bane. I don't really care about Bane. I've never read Batman Nightfall. I know I will shock you guys with what I have never read. I wasn't reading comics at that time, first and foremost. So there wasn't the hype. There is not the hype around it.
When you go back to it, it's very much rooted in its time. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it for a contemporary reader. It was important to me then. I don't know if it's necessarily important to anyone now.
But so the Bane that I'm most familiar with is the cinematic Bane, and
Sure.
he just seems like a jock to me. So I'm so excited
Right.
for everyone who's excited about Bane showing up in Absolute Batman, but it's going to have to be shown to me.
I love Bane so much that I like that Bane that Tom Hardy plays in The Dark Knight Rises quite a bit. I'm a big defender of that film, maybe a controversial opinion. The other thing about Bane, when those comics were coming out, all the covers or most of the covers were illustrated by Kelly Jones. And Kelly Jones's version of Batman and Kelly Jones's version of Bane are monstrous. They're superhuman. They're superhuman. The muscles, like you've never seen abs that feathered. They're incredible. They embrace illustration and cartooning and comics. And as much as I love Jim Aparo, when you read Batman, what number is it? 497? His interiors, his depiction of Bane just doesn't match the terrifying might of Kelly Jones. And so I've always had this little nagging creature in the back of my imagination going like, I want to see the Kelly Jones Bane inside those comics. So, now flash forward to the introduction of Absolute Batman last year, and they unveiled that big, chunky Nick Dragotta Batman. I loved it because I was like, this is comics. This is only what comics can do. My biggest problem whenever you adapt a comic book into a movie is you lose the illustration and all we're left with is boring ass human anatomy. Snooze, give me the drawings. Here is a Batman that is comics and is a monster. Oh my God. Immediately I thought, Lisa, and I think we talked about it at San Diego Comic-Con, what is Nick Dragotta's Bane gonna look like?
Oh, yeah. And now we've seen it, and it's a flippin' orc.
Yeah, it's grotesque. And as we talk about it with Scott and Nick, the version of Bane that we've seen in previews and solicits for issue 9, 10, and 11 is only half the story. And there's going to be a whole process of evolution regarding this character. And we're going to get into that with them in a moment.
I know this. He must be juicing, don't you think?
Yeah, it's Venom, Lisa.
I know that. I'm having fun. I want all of my villains to make it in the Hall of Fame. The baseball Hall of Fame. I don't want any asterisks.
All right, well, best of luck to Bane. Of course, this conversation that we're about to have with Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta is not all Bane-centric because of everything that Scott and Nick have been doing with the Absolute Batman series.
What has me excited every month for Absolute Batman is they set out from issue 1 with this thesis statement. They're going to get to the core of Batman, which they state like outright practically in issue 4, which is the Gabriel Walta issue, when young Bruce Wayne is working on his science fair project, right? And he asks his dad how he became a teacher. And he said, well, I wanted to be a heart surgeon, right? But that wasn't available to me. So I thought, what did I really want? I wanted to help children not feel scared anymore. Like I felt scared when my dad had his heart attack, right? And so I became a teacher. Like, how do you get to the core of a character like Batman? You change the variables.
Yeah.
Like we've had this conversation every time we've talked about Absolute Batman with Scott or with Nick or just with you guys. But I think it bears repeating, like, we are not our circumstances.
Right.
We are our hopes and dreams and deepest desires that can often be an enigma even to us.
Yeah, and so what you're about to hear are two conversations had at two separate times. The conversation with Nick Dragotta is going to end this episode. We actually had that months ago. It happened after the 6th issue was published. We had that conversation with a DC representative in the Zoom room with us. We didn't have a lot of time, just 20 minutes. Most of that conversation is about the character of Bane and how Nick Dragotta is tackling that beast, that creature. And if you're a Comic Book Couples Counseling patron, you've actually already heard that conversation several months ago. Before that, though, we're going to have a much longer conversation with Scott Snyder. This is nearly an hour, and we are digging into everything that has occurred in Absolute Batman so far, issue 1 through issue 8. And Scott also talks a lot about what you're going to see in issue 9. And again, he has some spoilers that he hasn't mentioned before anywhere else that he's going to be unveiling in future issues.
Let's not use the S word. Let's not use spoilers.
Scott uses the word spoilers quite a bit.
But I'm going to couch it in teases. He's teasing us, and it's super fun.
What I really like about this conversation with Scott is how we take the events of what happened in issue 4 and we discuss how they recently reflect in issues 7 and 8, the Mr. Freeze issues, the ones illustrated by Marcus Martín. I was especially moved by the introduction and reinterpretation of the Matches Malone character in issues 7 and 8. I love how that character's death affects Bruce Wayne. I love how that character's death affects the friend group. The confrontation that Waylon and Bruce have in issue 8 is fantastic. The emotional state in these two issues and how they mirror Bruce's reaction to his father's death at the zoo, the conversation that issues 4 and issue 8 are having with each other, so good. And then the Joe Chill of it all.
I love what Scott has to say about this being Bruce's maturation, that he has a lot of childish ideas about Batman and what Batman is actually about. And it is about like Bruce Wayne getting to his core of what he actually wants to accomplish by being Batman. And I think it's encouraging us to re-examine our relationship with Batman. What about Batman is actually aspirational? What immature thoughts do we have about Batman are actually kind of like in that toxic masculine space, because there's a lot of ugliness there.
Yeah, Scott and Nick don't accept Batman at the surface level. Like, they both agree that Batman is cool, but just because Batman is cool doesn't mean we can't have a deeper conversation about what makes Batman.
And I also don't think that a deeper conversation makes comics not fun.
Yeah.
That's how I have fun with comics. I don't know what you're all about.
Yeah, anyone listening to Comic Book Couples Counseling feels that way, Lisa.
I hope so.
But I do think we need to shut up before we ruin any more of this actual conversation that we have with Scott Snyder. Join us on the other side of it for our conversation with Nick Dragotta. And to hear what else we've got going on this week, there will be another Comic Book Couples Counseling episode on Wednesday.
We're doubling down.
Plus, on June 8th, at Meanwhile Coffee in Herndon, Virginia, we're having our very first comic book club in person. It's open to all. If you're in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, come on down. Let's talk about Helen of Windhorn by Tom King and Bilquis Evely and have a proper comic book club.
Hashtag CBCCBC.
No, wouldn't it be CBCCCBC?
CBCCCB. Yeah, you're right. Comic Book Couples Counseling. Comic book
Anyway,
CBCCCBC.
Here's Scott Snyder. Scott, welcome back to Comic Book Couples Counseling. Hello.
Hey, it's great to see you guys. Hey, Brad. Hey, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man. Lisa and I were just talking about how we could go in any number of directions with this conversation. And I think where we want to start is with the latest two issues, the Mr. Freeze arc. They are powerfully emotional, and they go to some really dark places. The story of Matches Malone, Freeze's story, Bruce's story, the confrontation that Waylon and Bruce have about, like, do you want to live? Where does that bubble from?
Thanks, man. Well, thanks again also first for having me and talking about all this. I'm so thrilled to be back on. You guys, I love your show and your audience. You guys have great fans. So
thank you.
I mean, for me, it really came from just talking to Nick about what the whole arc is about. Not just this arc, but I mean, what the whole first year of Batman is about. And one of the things that makes him so fun in that first arc, I think, is that he's also really pathological. Like he has a lot of things that he needs to fix about himself, but that lend themselves to kind of a big power fantasy when you're reading it for the first time, where he just dives headlong into anything. He doesn't care if anyone tells him it's not going to work. He's absolutely kind of a daredevil and someone who just doesn't seem to have like a doubt in his head about his ability to change even these giant systemic problems. And that's exciting and inspiring. But then when you back away from it and you think he's being completely impractical and he almost has this kind of death wish, where he's just jumping into everything, almost hoping to go down in flames, and it was the whole first year, not to spoil sort of, the whole trajectory of it, but really the whole first year is about him learning a couple big lessons. And the first one is, you're not being heroic. Ultimately, you're being self-destructive. You're not looking to survive any of this. Like each thing you're doing, you're you're just going in there because you have a twisted vision of the way your father saved everybody at that zoo. You're kind of thinking, I'm going to go down like he did. But he never would have, wanted to die that way. He would have survived if there was a way. So in that regard, his friends really call him out and say, Waylon especially, like, you're just looking to burn out. And that's what happened to Matches. So it came from like a real investigation for us of like, what makes this Batman really fun and appealing on page one. Like he just jumps right in and pulls the axe off his chest and chops off your arm. And he's just like nonstop. He doesn't care how many people he has to put in the hospital. But then backing away from it and being like, would that actually work? Like what does he have to learn? And the second big lesson which he learns in the Bane arc, this coming arc, is once you kind of turn a corner and you accept that this is for real, like this is for a long term, it's going to have repercussions on the people you care about, and you've got to deal with that. You've got to sort of figure out a way of not letting it break your back. I mean, not to use too much of a Bane metaphor, but instead feeling like, do you keep going, or do you say there's a pain point at which I can't do this? Even if they're willing, your friends are willing to be complicit in it, can you take it if one of them gets hurt? And then thirdly, like the real joker of it, like once it starts to get towards the beginning of 26, what he really learns is once you start to see what you're genuinely up against if you're Batman in this world, and all these villains have resources that are like nation state, capital, and you're up against a guy who has murder islands and caves and planes and like everything that Batman has, but evil in the main universe. How do you do that? And what he learns is like you gotta make Batman bigger than one person. It can't just be Bruce Wayne. It has to be everybody. And so it's this real each arc is really personal. It's really built around the things that I see my kids thinking about and learning as teenagers. My oldest is 18 and he's just about to go off to college in the fall. And seeing him and his friends confront a world that's really difficult and really seems a lot grimmer in a lot of ways than the world I felt like I faced when I came out of high school. But being so determined, it's the inspiration for the whole book, honestly, is seeing him and his friends be so determined, so hopeful, and yet also seeing the kinds of things that I suspect they're learning or have to learn over the course of, young adulthood.
There's so many things you just set on the table that I am like so excited to talk about. And I do still want to talk about the conversation about a sacrifice play because I feel like that's
Sure.
so important in comics. I feel like it's the kind of thing that is glamorized to the point where it's almost a trope where if there's a team, we're counting on one person dying. And I think especially for young people, that is a terrible message to put forth. And I like how you balanced it with Jim Gordon's message at the funeral of Jim Gordon going like, your father was so brave. And to a
Yeah.
child in the context of a funeral, your father was so brave that he was willing to die, contrasted with Waylon pointing out, oh no, in fact, your father hoped to live. You know what I mean? It just didn't work out that time. Can you talk a little bit more about, having the message in the forefront of your mind over the tropes that create hero stories?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And I mean, not to spoil too much, but Jim Gordon, there's an echo of that conversation coming in issue 12, where Jim, I'll just give it away, but Jim sort of says as much to Bruce when Bruce is Bruce, and Jim is sort of like, like, yeah, I know you think you're protecting everybody by not, telling people you're Batman and all of this stuff or whatever. But it's almost like in the main universe, Jim Gordon, I genuinely believe, like I believe everyone in the main universe almost has to sort of by force of will not look at who is Batman. Otherwise, it's the most obvious thing in the world. Like who has the resources to be Batman? Only one person. In this world, similarly, I think what he actually articulates the thing Jim does that I always felt he should articulate in the main world, but is just a line too far for DC, which is everybody, like everyone knows, they're protecting you. You're not protecting them by not admitting that they know. So they're putting their faith in you. You've got to put your faith back in them. And all of it is about survival, what he says to him. It's in a moment when Bruce really is like, this has gone too far and people are getting hurt that I didn't expect to get hurt. And it's why I didn't tell them this and that. And Jim is like, they all know, like they all signed up for it with you. So now you have to understand that you can't just give up. And whether giving up is going down in flames, like sacrificing yourself in that hero trope way, like you're saying, or it's genuinely giving up and hanging it up because you've gone too far and you decide, well, I can't go any further. Both those things he's saying are unacceptable. You've got to be like, how do I survive? How do I live with it? How do I inspire people in a real way? Not just sort of be in a tunnel vision aspect of what Batman could be until he flames out. But how do I affect real change as Batman in a real way, in a tangible, material way? And ultimately, like what's exciting to me about that is it does really speak to the inversion again of Batman in this world where I love main universe Batman. Don't get me wrong. Like there's no qualifying this Batman is more fun or better than that Batman or that Batman is better than this Batman. It's more like that Batman, the fun of him is almost like he only possibly ever could only be one person. Like, as much as we're like, we're all Batman, the fun of being like, we're Batman is that nobody could be Batman because it will require billions of dollars, training like nobody on Earth could do, and that's the fun of that fantasy is that only one person could be Batman. And so when you get to be him, you're excited. In this world, it's really inverted where Bruce doesn't have that much. I mean, he's really smart and he's super determined, but anyone could really be Batman. And so if you're going up against a Joker who is a, billionaire, handsome sort of power figure, then the only way to do that is collectivism. The only way is literally to make everybody Batman, to let everyone in and say, all of you can actually be Batman in this world. So let's all do this together and show him that it's not okay, like what he's doing.
Rereading the first arc today, it really is like I like the opportunity to have again the conversation between the difference between hope and faith because we get it reiterated again and again. Bruce Wayne was raised in a house of hope. Hope was the guiding ideal that he got from his father, and hope has to do with having a way out, having a plan, knowing that there is something that you can do to change your reality. But Bruce Wayne is, especially in the present of this story, not a person of faith. And that's why he doesn't want to collaborate with other people because he doesn't have faith in them that they will pull through in a way that he can count on himself. Where we see again and again that Martha Wayne is a person of faith, where she goes, I don't think you're going to shoot me. I don't think that you're going to support Mayor Hill. I don't think that Gotham is going to turn on itself and turn to nihilism. And she has zero evidence that is the case. Is that something that you think about often, faith versus hope?
Yeah, very, very much like it's a great way to put it. I wasn't necessarily thinking in those exact terms, but thinking more about the different levels of optimism and hope and faith in people as kind of one gauge. Where Martha, to me, I mean, like Thomas and Martha, I love them as these like old hippies, even though they grew up I always like hippies is the 60s, but here they would have grown up in like the 90s, which is really funny to think like I'm an old hippie. But I love that they and Jim Gordon as well had this friendship where they were big idealists. Like they're actually like, kind of pinko fun weirdos in their way. And you know, Martha is living in the aftermath of what Thomas did and trying to figure out how to raise her kid with that kind of hope and faith in the principles that, you're supposed to espouse about this country, about humanity, while just having everything feel more and more challenging in that regard. And one of my favorite moments is coming up in issue 9 next month, where Martha is like watching what's happening to Gotham and she's talking to Jim and she's like, you can't, they're packing up Jim's campaign office because he lost. And she's like, well, we got to go back out there. And he's like, I lost, buddy. It's done. Like we're finished. And she's like, that's not okay. I don't accept that. And he's like, no, 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 you're getting it wrong. I'm not saying we're done. I'm saying I'm done. For years now, you've supported me in like the big chair here. I think it's time for me to support you. And she's like, I'm not running for mayor. And he's like, I understand there's not another mayoral race for a few years. So the big question is you, Martha, with me at your back and this, like, who is Martha Wayne? What does she want to do to change things? And that's the beginning of a lot of things that are going to happen in the story with her and Jim and all of this stuff. It starts in issue 9. So it's a really big part. I mean, again, like Bruce takes a lot of inspiration from his parents in the main universe, but you know, a lot of that inspiration also just I think it gets misconstrued because their death is so huge, in his life. And here he lives with one parent still. He still has his mother guiding his interpretation of all that stuff, guiding his interpretation of his father, guiding his interpretation of the world. And it's so touching. There's a moment in I keep giving all these spoilers, but like one of my favorite moments is like in issue 9, like Bruce goes or he goes after trying to find Waylon. Spoiler, but if you haven't read 8 yet, like it involves like he eventually they have to go find what happened to Waylon. And it leads him into a bad place. And once that happens, he's missing for a while. And seeing Martha's struggle during that time, it shows the passage of time through Martha's struggling, how long Bruce is gone, was one of the favorite things I've ever written. Was like, just because as a parent, I feel it. And so it's Martha. Martha to me is the heart of the series, that she really is the one that's like, will not let Bruce off the hook. Like, and all of his friends, all of them are there to support him in these different ways. Like Waylon is a real conscience too, but Martha is the one that is almost always right about, you know, no, I could name a million things, but like there's a whole other in this Bane arc, one of the flashback sequence that you probably will see in preview really soon. But the flashback story has to do with Bruce at a sort of a little bit of a wild stage in his life when he's like 19, 20, and he's in a relationship with Selena, spoiler. And they're not, Selena is already sort of becoming Catwoman in her own way. And so he kind of is doing stuff like that with her, like they're both, being kind of wild and crazy. And Waylon comes to him and is like, I got a title shot, because Waylon is a UFC fighter. And he's like, I need you to train me. And Bruce is like, why would I train you? Like, I'm half as good as the people you work with. And Waylon's like, because you're my best friend. That's why you're going to do it. And like, it begins this kind of story in the past where Bruce really has to learn what it means again to not, through Martha as well. Because what I'm getting at is Martha gives him the biggest advice about this storyline without giving too much away, where she's sort of like, no matter what you think is going to happen, it's about believing in the people, who are doing the right thing and standing for them, even when it doesn't look like they're going to win, especially when it doesn't look like they're going to win. If they're fighting for the right thing, that's what matters. And you don't know how it's going to reverberate through time, And so that this whole storyline, she's very much like, it's not like Martha is a bit player. Martha has a really big role, even if it's only 3-4 pages an issue. She's kind of a moral backbone of the whole thing. And you know it's powerful too, because I'm always like, for me, I mean, writing it, because I'm always like, also like, I know the worry that she's gonna die. Like, I feel it. Fans say to me at conventions like how mad they're gonna be if she dies or gets hurt. So I feel it too. I feel it, and it's like, what is her story? What would be the most powerful version? So
Well, that's the power of revisiting a character from a different perspective, right? Like there are so many moments in Absolute Batman already that have investigated, you know, what Batman is and what we want from Batman, what we don't want Batman to be. I think one of the most brilliant issues of the run so far is issue 4 with Batman kind of, Batman becoming Batman, landing on this version of Batman. And in that issue, we have Joe Chill. We see how Bruce doesn't want to hear from Joe Chill as a child. There's nothing you could say at this moment in time that means anything to me. And then at the end of that issue, Bruce going to Blackgate and finally going like, okay, well, what did you want to say to me? And then the issue stopping. And it's like one of the most painful stops in a comic that I've experienced. Like that final panel, I was so desperate to know what came next. And yeah, I guess the question is, can you talk a little bit about Joe Chill, his role, and if we will ever see that conversation that we were denied?
That conversation, I think we're gonna really dig into it about issue 15. So this arc, the Bane arc, goes through issue 13, and then 14 and 15 are like special issues because of characters that are introduced and come back and all that stuff from Catwoman and Joker and all kinds of stuff. So that's going to be really fun. Again, I feel like I'm spoiling everything, but like I'm really excited. I'm excited enough that it doesn't, I don't think it hurts for people to know some of the plans. And then around that time is when Bruce really comes into his own and starts to form a plan about what it means to be Batman in this way that he will need to be to fight Joker. In that it means like bringing other people in as allies. It means bringing in Barbara Gordon and other people around the city that have surfaced in the book by that point, the Red Hood gang and other things like that. And so, for me, Joe Chill, the culmination of that conversation happens around then. And what you realize is Bruce goes to him every month and talks to him. He's been doing it since he's that. So it's a steady thing in his life. And he wants to know Nick and I talked a lot about this when we started, because I actually had this idea that he would go and be like, because I forgive you. And Nick was like, no, Nick was right. Like he does not forgive him. He's not willing to do that. At least not for a long time, not yet, even as an adult, as Batman. But he desperately wants to know what made him so that he can stop that from happening again. And he wants to understand him. And he thinks bigger. And that's the whole idea of this bridge metaphor for Batman, that in this universe, it all begins with engineering, with Bruce building something that's supposed to be almost impossibly connective. And that's the lesson that he learns, again, spoiler, by the end of the first year, is that he has to be a bridge, not like a wall against things. He's got to be a bridge.
You foreshadow that in issue 4 with the literal bridge that child Bruce is building and showing off to his dad.
Spoiler, he finds that bridge again towards the end of the year. So again, like that, it's a big part of it. You know what it is also, Brad and Lisa, like I haven't had this much time ever to plan out a Batman's run, or story. Because the minute I got on Batman back in 2011, 2010, I never expected to be on it. But then once I was on it, it like never stopped. It was like not 1 month off, just bang, 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 bang for 5-6 years, just like. So, I mean, I definitely, thought about it all the time and like planned it as much as I could. But there wasn't like the ability to take a whole year before you start it and be like, what are some of the through lines that I want to build? Not right now, but I'm going to save for later. Characters like Harley Quinn, they have big plans for her. Characters like Scarecrow, Deathstroke, you'll see soon. Like a lot of this stuff that's almost how each note plays in the bigger song of Batman. Like what if you inverted Batman's sort of mythology, where would they fall? And what dark or light things do they do? All of that, like I've had a lot of time. So it's the first time I feel like I'm really working within an architecture that I got to set up with plenty of time to kind of kick it and make sure like I really liked it. I mean, I'm not saying it's the best in terms of like people might hate it, but like I am really confident in it, and Nick is too, because we've really considered every aspect of it. Like I've considered what Selina, her past is, what her relationship is, what why she's different as Catwoman than the main universe Catwoman. What's cool about her? Wait till you see her. She's so awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
We can't wait. Like all that thought and consideration is very evident on the page, which I think is why so many people are responding so positively towards it. The Joe Chill thing, I'm not fishing for spoilers.
Oh, I love them. I do not believe in spoilers. If it's a good story, you can't spoil it.
I understand,
Yeah,
Lisa.
me too.
I think like asking Bruce or thinking Bruce might forgive Joe Chill. That's a huge ask. I can't imagine
Yeah.
something like that personally. But I also think it's pretty radical, Scott, that you're having Bruce have those conversations with Joe Chill in the first place and feels very much like a 2025 move. I think the readership uh, understands and maybe even craves a longer conversation with Joe Chill, is what I'm
Well,
saying.
that's what we're gonna do is the special issues about how Joe Chill became Joe Chill, like what happened to him, and Bruce trying to understand what things he can do, if anything, to stop that from happening, and trying again, like it's a reaffirmation of what Batman's supposed to stand for, right? I mean, because the power fantasy is sure, like Batman goes and he beats up the bad guys, but in this world too, like the bad guys are institutionalized. Like the bad guys are, it's not just Joker, but you'll see soon. We're doing another, I just came off of an absolute team call, and we're doing a whole thing where the villains start meeting up. They don't know each other, but they start to really meet up towards the end of this year, and they have a bigger plan, and they understand the nature of their world very differently than you would think. And it's really fun, and Joker is a big part of that. But here it's like those villains are the ones in tremendous power, and the heroes have very little. And so in that way, like, what can you do? Like, because that's the thing that my kids face, that all of us feel, right? Like every day, it kind of, to me, whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, and like, look, I wear my politics really openly on social media and in my life, like, so you can take them or leave them, but I'm not here to sort of proselytize like my beliefs so much as to say that like whatever side you're on, I think it's safe to feel like very more every day, like it feels like very few people have more and more grip, like a heavier grip on the levers of power, and those people are rich and powerful, and the deck is stacked towards them. And fewer and fewer of us, or middle working class people, everyone feels that they can change things, feels that the system gets more and more entrenched in a way that feels like it gets less malleable every year. And that feeling, I think, is so potent. And I think it fuels really fervent politics on both sides, in terms of like, I think people that really believe there needs to be a radical upheaval of the kind of economic and political system on the left, like, feel that. And I also believe that people, as much as I'm a lefty, as much as, I think that those same feelings are what drive a lot of people into the arms of nationalism and all this kind of feeling of like, well, how do we be strong, and how do I feel, like all of that stuff. And so, in this world with Bruce, I think the hard thing, the thing that like you actually need to do that's heroic, is looking at things from all sides, and have not, I don't mean looking at things from both sides of like extreme like toxicity in this. I mean looking at an institutional problem like gun violence and saying, what created this? Like, what is it? And there's no simple answer that's like, it's just these bad people, or it's just this. I mean, there are a lot of bad people that make, I think, decisions politically and all of that engender it. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that the hard thing, the Batman thing, is to try and reach further like a bridge, and try and look at the problem holistically and say, what are real solutions to this? What are things that we can do that have a complex, multifaceted look at this problem? It can be mental health, it can be gun reform, it can be support systems for people that are struggling, it can be better safety in public places, it can be all these things. Like, why can't it be everything? And so that feeling that it doesn't need to be binary, like it's this or it's this, or it's don't take your hands off everything or take everything, like all of that. There's a way of thinking of it that's prismatic, that to me is wherever you fall, again, and whatever my beliefs are, Bruce Wayne needs to sit there and have that conversation with Joe Chill. Be like, what made you? What is it? Because the easy thing to do is be like, I hope you rot in jail. The easy thing to do is be like, you know what? I forgive you. I move on. That's both of those are easy. Not easy. It's not easy to forgive him. But I mean, both those things don't do anything ultimately. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
what does something is to be like, let's look at what things made you do what you did, and then address them in a real way in the world. And that to me, that's why sitting across from him is the heroic thing. Listening to him, talking to him, that is the Batman thing, in this world, in this version, you know? Because what he represents, he is the product, he is the thing. He is like one of the things that to me is so emblematic of everything wrong right now with our world, which is he is a perfect storm of things that come together to form a problem that seems unsolvable, like climate change, like this gun violence, like where people go into public places and kill people for reasons that are, private ideologies that make almost no sense to most people and whatever. And that thing, that knot is feels like, oh, we can't untangle it. But that's the point, is like, to me, Batman needs to look at it as something that can be untangled, you know? Anyway, sorry if that's like the longest.
No.
Oh no, we love that. Because like one of the things I was thinking about that is one of the themes of this book is the alienation between idealism and practicality.
Yeah.
And where that comes in a lot is the most boring conversation you can have about Batman. Like, why won't he use guns? You know what I mean? And it's because he's an idealist. Like, he doesn't believe in them. You also have the added element that he's like kind of grossed out by them because they killed his dad. But like, it's reiterated again and again. The choices that you make you the person that you are.
Yeah.
And so it's on you to make the good choice. Therefore, if you make the bad choice, you make the wrong choice, you are a weak person. And so the idea of Bruce Wayne sitting with Joe Chill and at least getting to the point where he understands the practicality of the choice that Joe made, would be
Yeah.
tremendous for his character.
That's the way I'm looking at it, is that it's not a journey towards forgiveness, and it's not one of like, damn Joe Chill to hell. It's more, this Bruce really desperately wants to help and stop things. And Joe Chill is a riddle he needs to solve. And that means seeing him as a person and seeing him as someone who maybe is had a lot of things happen to him that some of which are preventable, some of which are not, all these kinds of things. So it's going to be a really special issue. I haven't written it yet, but I've been thinking a lot about it. But you'll see him go back there a couple times throughout the next 6 months of the series. Like, you'll see Bruce in that setting. So it becomes a through line. And it really is like the moment, to me, the moment that he kind of reconciles, not with Joe Chill, but with his kind of relationship with with these conversations, comes right before the big finale of the first year, because it sets him up. It's kind of the last piece in some ways that makes him Batman. That's like, I accept this now. Like, I accept what I accept the things I accept, like, what I think I can do, what I can't do, what is accept what is, what is like possible, what is impossible, and what I am. And so it's really built into the fabric of it. I mean, it's hard because part of the series, like, as much as we're talking these things, like, there's also like in issue 9, it's like Bruce takes an underwater Batmobile to break into a crazy place, and then he fights all these dudes he fights so many dudes that the hospital runs out of ambulances, which is one of my favorite. He fights so many criminals that they run out of ambulances, and then they use ride shares, and then when they run
Oh,
out,
I love it.
yeah, and then they run out of ride shares, and so they're like, a couple of the EMTs even use rickshaws, and they're like taking them to the thing, and so it's wrapped in like, it's kind of like got 8 layers of candy on top of it, which is the way I like to write it, because I never want it to feel like it knows the answers or it's coming at you in a way that's just, some kind of airtight, unoxygenated argument about things, but instead is always first and foremost, this kind of Batman is awesome
Yeah,
book. And
there's
because
no doubt. No
and I
doubt.
believe I believe that's like actually a crucial thing about Batman himself, like more than any other hero in the world. I really believe this, that like Batman, because he is a character that is formed in a really relatable kind of trauma. Not that we know what it's like to have our parents killed, but you understand that. It's different. Superman's trauma is like his whole world explodes. Like, it's almost unfathomably big. You know what I mean? But you can imagine what it's like to have your parents killed in front of you, or that, like, as horrifying as that is. And there's as a child, I can't think of many things worse than that. I mean, yes, there's nightmarish things, but it's up there. So the idea of being like, if Batman as a construction, the simplest thing about him, if you burn him down to like his absolute DNA, he is just a boy who suffers this terrible thing. And instead of having the world crush him, he gets up and he's like, I'm actually going to turn this into fuel to make the world better and make sure that this never happens again. And that lesson in and of itself is so powerful and relatable to people that all the other stuff isn't important. Like the money and the cars and all that is fun. But what is crucial to that lesson is being fucking awesome. Because if you suffer stuff and you get back up and punch the world back even harder as like being a good person, people want that. And so it's actually to me like baked into the deep DNA of Batman, whether it's and like Lego Batman does this so well, but like the Batman needs to be amazing and it needs to be fun and he needs to show off and he needs to win and he needs to every issue you want to be like, fuck yeah, Batman is I love Batman. So it's very like in my mind, like not just kind of the fun trimming of like, oh, it's Batman, let's make it awesome and fun. It's like a deep part of the mission with him is that he is a he it's powerful when he's awesome because he's formed in trauma that you understand. And it's always saying to people, you can beat the thing that's you're struggling with. You can be awesome. You can get up and be the hero. You can, do the thing that everyone's going to be talking about for a month until they see you again, in your next issue. So that's part of it is that the series, for all of its seriousness, also I want it to be like the biggest celebration of Batman awesomeness you've ever experienced.
All right, so let's take a pause real quick and have a moment with our sponsors. Love sci-fi, love horror, love fantasy, love action?
I do.
Then 2000 AD is the greatest comic you're not reading. 2000 AD has a whole universe of characters from Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog to Rogue Trooper, Shakara Halo Jones, and the poor sod slogging across the cursed earth in the Helltrekkers.
In every weekly issue, you'll get 5 action-packed thrills from incredible creators such as Garth Ennis, Rob Williams, Arthur Wyatt, Henry Flint, Alex DeCampi, Dan Abnett, and many more. Get a print subscription to your door every week, and your first issue is free.
Or subscribe digitally, get free back issues, and download DRM-free copies of each issue for just $9 a month. That's 128 pages of incredible comics every month for less than $10. And all subscribers get amazing offers like money off vouchers and exclusive products.
Head to 2000AD.com and click on subscribe now, or download the 2000AD app and start reading today. Link in the show notes. Well, I love that you're making Batman aspirational again. And, because especially, as our conversation about fascism and billionaires and all of that stuff is evolving, we want to be able to bring Batman with us. And you brought him up, so I'm going to talk about Superman. Like,
Sure.
For so long, Superman has been posed as this hero who is about hope, like Superman is hope. And I would argue that Superman is not hope. Superman is faith. Like, you're in trouble.
Agreed.
You have faith that Superman is going to get you. Batman is hope because Batman is saying you have the resources to make this world a better place. You have the resources to save someone else. You have the resources to be awesome. You do not have to be born on this other planet with these superpowers.
Yeah, and it's almost this kind of flip, right? Like the way I see it is like Superman is this impossible, godlike, amazing thing. And he's inspired by you. And that gives you it makes you feel so like worthy and that it makes you want to get up and be amazing because Superman, this god, is looking at you like, I'm inspired by you humans and by you person who, I believe in you. And that's a wonderful feeling and that's a wonderful construction for a hero. Batman to me is more like he's not going around like I believe in you. He is us. And by virtue of example, he is saying, believe in yourself because I can overcome these things and become this champion because I am showing you that you can too. And there's a very different sort of message in both those things and equally powerful and equally wonderful. And again, I love both characters. But that said, like the Batman one just hits the nerve for me all the time where it's like always like Batman, you watch Batman, you're like, I want to do that. Superman comes in and is like, I should believe in myself. You know what I mean? That's it is distinct the way you're saying. Like I would argue, like you're saying, you have faith in Superman, but also Superman has faith in you. And that in and of itself is the beauty of Superman, that he could crush all of us and yet he's inspired by us, right? And Batman, it's like Batman is like he's like hope that you can overcome any trauma and be the hero of your own story. And that to me is why the more awesome he is, the more powerful that message is, which is why you want him to be like, knocking motherfuckers like through 8 buildings and like, with the coolest gear and all that stuff.
Heck yeah. And so the question then becomes, in finding the antagonists for Batman, you are looking for what the theme needs now. Like Freeze works so well with where Batman is at this point in the story. And now we're moving into meeting this version of Bane.
Yeah.
Why are we hitting Bane now?
Bane is like, because they're all reflections of Batman the same way in the main universe. They're extensions of his fears, right? So in the main universe, like to me, you can draw these easy parallels, right? Like Two Faces, the duality of his characterization, Joker. You don't have to get into it, but like Oswald Cobblepot is class. Like it's the fear that you're detached from people because you've been raised super rich, and he comes up on the streets, and so they all hit these nerves. But in this world, those characters are his friends, which is the most fun thing to write in the entire series. It's my favorite thing to write. I love them dearly. I never expected to, but I love Oswald. He's just always cursing and always like, I love Ozzy. I love all of them. Waylon is like my secret favorite, but still and like you know, for me, I think the villains, like when you think about like Freeze is someone who believes, like Black Mask is someone who believes everything is over. The rich have eaten everything. We just get the crumbs, so enjoy it. It's a party of the dead. Like enjoy, get what you can. The Freeze is someone who believes that in the reckoning coming. He believes that there's a reckoning coming sort of for everybody that thinks they're all happy and safe and doesn't want to look at the things buried in the ice, whether that's climate change, without saying these things, whether it's like climate change or, resource depletion, like all these things, like, but he's like excited for that. He wants there to be, he's a child, he's a monster of the ice who even his own parents he hates because he believes they thought of the ice as this beautiful thing that had cures in it and would preserve Nora or preserve somebody in, until the world is better, instead of like asshole, like that's the easy thing. Like to be like, I'm gonna go sleep in ice until it's all fixed, instead of being like, no, 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 no. The ice is pain. The ice is coming for you. The ice is, and he's a monster of that, which I love. He's a monster of nihilism that way, of like of despair and desire for that. And then Bane is somebody who made a really particular choice at a certain point in his life. He's the same character. He's from Santa Prisca. He's the child of a father who is a rebel fighter against colonial powers on that island. But ultimately, he's raised in the prison in all the kind of ways that he's even bigger and tougher in all these ways. But at a crucial moment when he's given the opportunity to kind of be like, do you want to keep fighting this way? Really? Like, do you really think this is going to work? Or do you want to keep everybody on this island that you care about and love safe? And the way that you do that and turn this island into a paradise is to cut a deal. And if you cut a deal and become Bane, you become the thing we need, then
Mm.
everyone you love, everyone that you want to protect, they'll live wonderful lives. But if you don't, like, you know, do what you want, see how it turns out. And
Mm.
so Bane is this reflection of Bruce as Bruce's friends. And again, I'm just like spoiling everything, but I still feel I'm not, again, I hope this makes you want to read it as opposed to being like, but like
Totally.
as Bruce worries more and more about his friends and family being vulnerable, there's this figure who's saying, you could be me. You could be just like me. You could replace me. You could be me. And that to me is this powerful kind of like reckoning for Bruce, which is like, is it true that the only way to be safe these days is to cozy up to power, as opposed to fighting it and putting yourself in danger and everyone you care about in danger? Is it worth it? You know what I mean? If you go to Elon Musk or someone and they're like, look, if you stop talking about me or you know what I mean? Like you support me, you'll get however many $1 million and it'll be generational wealth. How many people would do that? A lot of people would do that. You know what I mean? Rather than see fractional rewards of fighting against that every year of your life, because it's the
Yeah.
right thing to do. And so Bane is this example of something that's been enhanced and is bigger and tougher and the venom doesn't just make him a brute. He also has an incredible mental abilities, not psychic abilities, but like he's sort of a genius, you know? And so he knows every fighting style and knows every military conflict throughout history. He's kind of like a walking embodiment of war. And he's sort of like, oh, you're cute. You know what I mean? You're going to use that style. You're going to come at me in Muay Thai. Oh, let's do that. I'll tell you the whole history. You're going to come at me with Taekwondo. Oh, Taekwondo. Oh, yeah, sure. And it's just like, it's like Neo in the Matrix, or it's just like, like,
Amazing.
so I love writing him. I've never really written Bane extensively before, and this version of him it's tragic too. I really love him because he even has, you start to hint that he has a family. Like he really believes that this is what you do. You protect. He saw what happened with his father, and he's like, how you protect the people you love is by picking the winning side, you know? So these villains really do have, power. And then that's where Martha comes back in, like I was saying earlier, because Martha is the one that slaps Bruce like seriously with this and is like, in the past, you don't give up on Wayland because you think he's gonna lose, You don't tell him to quit. You believe in your friend. Like, and in the present, it's like you don't quit because, here, you don't cut a deal or cozy up to them or give up because you're afraid we're gonna get hurt. You know what I mean?
Mm.
To me, it goes back to Martha all of the way in oh, I'm not going to be able to name the issue, but like in like issue 2 or 3, where she said like nobody would blame you. Your circumstances create a situation where you could lean into your trauma and your pain and you can become angry and bitter and everyone would understand.
Yes.
But that's not who you are, right? You're an idealist. You're going to choose hope. Like, so, like, the full evolution of Bruce Wayne would be like, not only does he defeat Bane and support his ideals, but he also understands and embraces where Bane is coming from and goes, like, I understand you're traumatized and that's awful, like to both, stop Bane and love Bane would be
That's Nick's. I'll tell you the secret. Like Nick's pitch, we still haven't written the last issue of it, like 13. I've written up through 12, but I haven't written 13 yet. I mean, I wrote most of it, but the very end has a Catwoman thing that I really want to nail exactly right, and it also has this. And she's awesome. She's almost like Batman. In this world, I'm spoiling it, but she's got all the resources because she's like beyond successful. So she's like at being a thief and all that. She has this whole history that you'll see explored later with other Bat characters. But she is like Ethan Hunt meets John Wick meets like she's like beyond,
hot,
and
super hot.
yeah, and she's got she's not like in the leather outfit with the thing. She's got like the outfit that's like the $1 billion suit that's like has the cat and it like retracts and she's got like all the cool gadgets and everything, whereas Bruce doesn't. So she's just badass. Like I love her to death. But anyway, like there's that. And then but Nick really wants to do a coda where even if he doesn't have a lot of money, Bruce does something for Santa Prisca at the end to be like, because you know that what the villains are going to say to Bane, if you don't beat this guy, we're going to burn your island. You know what I mean? We'll kill everybody. We'll hurt everybody you care about because you're never safe in those situations. When you sell your ideals out, you're never safe. You know what I mean? You can't cozy up to somebody and think that they're going to protect you when they have no morals, ultimately. There's no, it's a losing game. And so Bane is tragic to me and I love him, but he is tough as nails. Wait till you see. There are all these surprises to him too about his design and all this stuff you'll see and his history and all kinds of special cool stuff. So and who he's interacted with and so there's a lot of things that we're not revealing that you'll see even in issue 9. There's like 3 or 4 big Easter eggs that you're like and that's like just to say like they're gonna give out. I don't know when you're gonna air this, but like on today, maybe even right now, DC was excited enough about issue 9 that they sent it out, or they're sending it with their newsletter today to all retailers, so that you'll actually see they'll all have issue 9 a month early. And then because FOC, the final order cutoff is Monday, and they worry that it's going to sell out because of some of these surprises, and they want people to order appropriately ahead of time because we've had some issues with like things selling out and then not getting them back fast enough. So if you go pick up 8 and you're there before Monday, whatever it is, the 17th, 18th or whatever,
Yeah.
19th, go order it. Order the Bane starter with Nick from your store.
No doubt. You should be subscribed already. Thank you, Scott, for hanging out and talking all things Absolute Batman today. It's always a pleasure, but we are just so in love with what you and Nick are doing, and Marcos and Gabriel. Like, it's just an awesome series.
Thanks. I'm so deeply proud of the book for the work they're putting into, and we're really like a big team. So I really appreciate it.
See, we were not lying. Scott revealed quite a bit in that conversation. We're extremely grateful to him for going as deep as he does into this story and into his characters.
I'm really interested to see how the conversation about faith and hope play out. I think that those are two concepts that are often misunderstood at a surface level. I feel like people don't get to the core of those two things. And I would love to see Bruce Wayne become a person of faith, to really begin to believe in other people, believe in his friends, believe in the people in Gotham.
Yeah, what I love so much about Absolute Batman is while you're reading it, you are seeing a plan unfold.
Yeah.
You might not recognize every turn, every surprise, but you recognize the foreshadowing. It's a incredibly thoughtful comic in every panel.
And I think that Scott is really proud of the interconnectedness of these things.
As he should be. I feel like this is what everything he was noodling on in his New 52 Batman run and his All-Star Batman run, that was like a I'm not going to say like a test or a practice run, because both of those runs I think are actually really incredible, but I feel like he has been marinating on the bat for so long, and through that soak, through that percolation, he has unlocked something in himself about this character.
And I think it also shows the power of the single issue, the episodicness of comic books.
Yeah.
The idea that you read something in these like 22-page chunks spaced out by a month. Like it's made for you to kind of marinate on and consider over time. And those reiterations are so necessary.
This might be a bit of a stretch, and it might just be an excuse for me to bring up my favorite TV show of all time, Andor. Lisa.
Brad is obsessed. Like, guys, he has found every single interview, podcast. It is all Andor all of the time. Please help me.
And Lisa's had to hear me process all of those interviews with Tony
It's great.
Gilroy.
I freaking love Andor, but dude.
But like, what's so awesome about the second season of Andor and the structure of it, these episodes, 3 episodes representing 3 days in one significant year, or over 4 years, and how those 3 days really indicate the negative space, like the negative space of storytelling that is happening between episodes. And I've been thinking about that in regards to Absolute Batman and the story that's occurring off panel. That's what's great about comics. I mean, like, the whole magic of comics is the story that's happening between panels. It's what you're not seeing. That's like the most delicious stuff. The illusion of animation is why I love comics so much. But I do think that there is a lot of negative space storytelling happening in Absolute Batman, especially in terms of Joe Chill. We've only gotten tiny little chunks of what Bruce is up to with Joe Chill. And as we heard in this conversation with Scott, we're going to get a lot more. And the conversation around forgiveness regarding what Joe Chill did at the zoo is something that I am very concerned about in my own life, my own well-being. I want to be a person who believes in forgiveness, but I'm finding forgiveness to be very difficult in 2025 for me personally. And I'm finding that I need to make a practice of forgiveness.
I would love to know what Scott's definition of forgiveness is, because he's saying, like, you know, Batman will never forgive Joe Chill.
Well, he doesn't think Batman will forgive Joe Chill. And Nick Dragotta apparently said we cannot have him forgive Joe Chill. Like, they had that conversation.
Yeah, but like, does forgiveness mean like all of the anger goes away? Does forgiveness mean that you pretend that it never happened? Or does forgiveness mean like, I hear your story and I can see how someone in your place would do the same thing?
Yeah, I think the conversation that we had with Scott is about Bruce Wayne creating empathy for the person who killed his father.
And I think that is forgiveness.
It might be. It might be.
It
But the
might
word forgiveness is a loaded word.
Just like faith and hope. Like, so I think the thing that's not appreciated about faith, hope, and forgiveness is that you can do those things, you can feel those things or practice those things and still not be happy. Like, they're not keys
and
to
still
contentedness.
Have the hurt,
yes.
Right? Like, forgiveness
yes.
doesn't erase hurt. Right.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm thinking a lot about forgiveness right now. I really appreciate that insight there, Lisa. And I hadn't really considered that before. How the simple act of empathy could be a version of forgiveness. Yeah. Again, I want to talk about Andor. I want to talk about Cyril. But that's a different podcast, probably. I wish we had been thinking about forgiveness when we had the conversation with Nick Dragotta, but that was not really what was on our mind. What was on our mind was his interpretation of Bane and what he might think of Kelly Jones's Bane. And so the conversation you're about to hear with Nick starts there. And it's also where Lisa's like, I'm just going to let Brad start this conversation because I do not care about Bane. So Brad, take it away. So yeah, let's just roll right into the Nick Dragotta conversation. Again, this was part of his press tour, so we didn't have as much time with Nick that we did with Scott. Of course, we did have a very long conversation with Nick Dragotta way back when the second issue of Absolute Batman came out. So there's a link in the show notes to our very first Scott Snyder Absolute Batman conversation, but also our very first Nick Dragotta Absolute Batman conversation. So take a look at those if you haven't already. Nick, good to talk to you again about Absolute Batman. Hello.
Hello.
I had to make a request with Lisa for the first question because I'm a 90s boy and the comic is out now. I'm holding it in my hands. We can talk about the last page. Bane is coming.
He's so excited for Bane. Unrelatable.
Yeah. Well, you weren't there for Nightfall, Lisa.
That's true.
What does it mean for you to bring Bane into the Absolute universe?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't want to say too much, but if I was to move my camera 2 feet to the left, you would see the covers that show Bane and what he's going to look like in the Absolute universe. And let's just say he's going to go through a couple different iterations. I'm a nostalgia guy myself, so I'm going to lean that way. But this being Absolute, we're definitely going to go big and go bigger and go as big as we can. So I'll leave you with that. But I think Scott's take on Bane is something we haven't seen before. And it kind of plays into everything that this JK Industry, Arkham stuff we've kind of been setting up within this first arc all plays a role and it's all connected and it's a really cool take.
Yeah, when I was a kid reading Nightfall, and you would get those Kelly Jones covers, and
Yeah.
like that Bane. So I have that Bane at the forefront of my imagination, and then I put that Bane into this world, and I feel like, like I love Jim Aparo when you got to see the actual interiors of those issues, but that Bane was very different than the Kelly Jones Bane. And so I
Yeah.
feel like you have an opportunity to do the Kelly Jones Bane that we never got inside.
I'll do my best. I mean, I'm with you. I'm like it goes back to even our my absolute Batman designs, right? You can't mess with it too much. It has to be recognizable and then it has to feed into that love and nostalgia and then that cool factor. Like no
Yeah.
one feathered muscles as cool as Kelly Jones and it, exaggerated things like Batman's ears or drew such a lush cape. Um, I personally don't have those skills, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think, Brad, you're going to get some of that for sure.
Okay. 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 I'll take it.
I mean, that last page also promises things to get really, really weird and gross, which gets me excited.
This is all to come, and these are teases, as you know. So the storyline for the Joker, I mean, geez, that's not for another like 7 issues, maybe. Like we got Marcos Martin coming on for two villains on issue 7 and 8, which are we're going to see the new freeze, the absolute freeze, which is it's awesome. I've read 7. It's great. You're going to get more of Bruce's interaction with his friends and their reaction to him being Batman, which is really great. We get a new friend thrown in who we haven't seen yet. So like everything we've been building, all this drama's starting to pay off, and a lot of these emotional beats are going to start hitting. And then yeah, going back to Bane and the Joker, that's down the line, and then that's the arc I'm working on now. Like the covers that will be solicited next, you'll get a glimpse of Bane. Again, this being absolute, don't judge a book by its cover. It's all gonna go crazy. So it's yeah, we're having fun.
Last time we talked a lot about Batman being someone who is just good with their resources. And I see this group of friends as something that other Batman, not absolute Batman, did not have.
Mhm.
This pool of friends from which to pull from. But then this also creates, I think, probably a tenuous web of trust. Like I'm sure that all of these friends are not fully on board with the Batman situation.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the beauty of this drama, right? Like we kind of, in just knowing Batman lore, we know where they're all gonna end up, or we expect them to end up. And that's just been the fun of this. Realizing like all of his rogues, like the core of the rogues gallery of villains were also there at that day of the shooting, and we learned
Right.
that in this issue. And then not only that trauma, but then the trauma growing up in Gotham, and then how they are each like Ozzy's already, he's up to no good, doing some things, and Bruce has learned from each of them. They've all come up together. The world is not as black and white. It's more gray. And then I can't wait till you see some of the storylines that are how because I mean, spoiler alert, but they're all going to eventually become who we know them to be, but with that absolute twist on them. And all the relationships, though, it's not as simple as you're bad, I'm good. It's just not
Mm.
Right.
that simple. And Batman's going to have to wrestle with that. And then also his actions are actually going to help make some of these people like take the turns that they do. And yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, though, it's like a family. So he
Mhm.
can't really divorce himself from it. He's not there to defeat them. Ultimately, they're there to help one another, and that's what friends do. Yeah, I really like what Scott and I got cooked up and the way this is all going to unfold. It's going to be really cool.
Some of my favorite things I've seen you draw have been these 2-page spreads in Absolute Batman. We talked about the gun in the first issue the last time we talked, and I think we have to talk about this 2-page spread of issue 6, where we get to see the friends of Bruce. It's a photograph that then gets seen several other times throughout the issue. Can you talk a little bit about capturing that moment on that day for those characters in that 2-page spread?
I mean, just like I remember, yeah, I mean, you just draw on, what it was like to be a kid and innocence and just trying to capture that in the drawing. And then it's just the tragedy of it because, like we all know their stories. So we all know like it's not going to be easy from that day forward. And like when I draw the kids, I personally, whenever you see kids in a script, you're like, ugh, or different iterations of Bruce or different ages is just difficult. I mean, I only have I have a limited skill set. I do the best I can, but when it comes to kids, I'm very much of like the Alex Toth tradition of less is more, and to add to truth just detracts from it. So you want to kind of create these simple icons that all of us as readers look at and go, yeah, that's them as a kid, but not be too individually specific, and go, oh, that's the kid from Silver Spoons Nick is obviously referencing, or that's, Macaulay Culkin in this movie. Like you want them to just read immediately and then Scott's dialogue over top of it and just merge those words and pictures and just, try and have some emotional resonance. So I think like I go towards less and more like of an iconic look for each character. And that's the thought behind it. But it's cool to hear you say that, Brad, because like you really want the emotional resonance to come through. And that's probably been the most gratifying thing. Like when we first talked, I remember, even after our podcast, we talked forever about like what this book is. And I couldn't quite answer it because you really don't know until you really get into it and start doing it. And I knew we had a good start, but I couldn't answer every question because it's like it's just the book grows and evolves as we make it. And yeah, so I think that's what's been really gratifying to hear is a lot of people like into that emotional resonance and feeling that like the craft we're trying to display in this comics is working.
So much of this comic is the balance of like expectations versus surprise. And I feel like the both of you walk that line so delicately, though I do hear we're getting a large Bane. Wouldn't a teeny tiny Bane be shocking? Like a really teeny weeny.
It would, but I mean, he's gonna be Batman. I want someone you're gonna see and go, Batman doesn't stand a chance against this. And then when you get this guy's like what he's been through, his experiences, you're gonna be like, yeah, maybe God, I don't want to give anything away. All right.
We want everything. That is what we're here for. We are literally plumbing right now.
I know, but there's like again, it's just Bruce is just gonna be constantly hit with these decisions he has to make, and I don't think any of them are good, and it's just yeah, it's fun. It's gonna be fun.
But what does it feel like when you are setting up one of those expectation defying moments? Does it feel conspiratorial, or do you feel like, oh, I hope they can handle this? You know what I mean?
No, I think at this point, Scott and I have learned to just trust our instincts. And we got an incredible team. Like I gotta mention Frank Martin Jr., Clayton Cowles, Katie Kubert, Scott, like it's a deadline driven industry, right? So like there's only so much time you can actually think about these things. And at a certain point, you're literally running on instincts and reacting to the world every day as you sit down and draw this art. I guess like to distill it in its most simplistic form. And you can't give too much thought about that, but like that is a definite point though. So at least like I see people talking about Batman punning the kid. That was something Scott and I had a laugh about like 3 months ago when Scott was like, we got to have a big epic. Scott's always like epic fights, and then this issue, I was like, I remember saying, for the kid, he's just gonna punt him. And me and Scott started cracking up laughing. And then it was like, all right, well that's gonna work because our reaction to it immediately was like, this is funny. And then also just in terms of the real estate of the issue, like we were on the boat by page maybe 15. So I have 5 to 7 pages to beat up 3 people, right? And so that part of the script, I'm like, you know what? This crew are the string pullers, but maybe they're not so tough. Maybe they don't like actually fighting. So they jump ship, right? And Batman
Mhm.
throws them the life vest, preservers. Now Black Mask is a badass and can fight. We've shown that. And he almost gets Batman, but then he meets his demise in a way we've never seen before. And that was a scene I kind of rushed. And then Scott,
Oh,
Scott was like, Nick, this needs a real exclamation point. All the paneling was basically the same, but the splash page was added. And
yeah.
that's like, to me, that goes back to craft. And that's Scott being like, man, Nick, you got to trust me on this. Like, let's just add this page. And that's where, like, that's the beauty of this book. Like, I don't, under deadline, I don't fear having to draw an extra page. I don't go, well, it wasn't in the script. No, it's like me and him both throw ideas at this book in the moment as we're creating. And we know, and we always do what's best for story. And like in that instance, Scott was right on the money because like I see everyone talking about it. And it was such a cool moment and nothing we've ever seen him do with, say, his bat ears that Scott was absolutely right. Like it needed that bigger extra punch. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it is
So
so good. And Brad and
yeah,
I
like
were like doing
Lisa,
the
to your point,
measuring
like there
thing.
is thought about it, but you got to commit, right? You got
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like we're not then going back and looking, can we make it better or should we remove it? It's just that's the nature of this business. And that's why
But
I wouldn't think, we shouldn't probably get hung up on too much of this. We're just all doing the best we can.
like the giggling about a punting a child, like that's a conspiratorial, like, oh, I can't wait for them to get it like an eye full of this. But Brad brought up like your big splash panels. I want to talk about your teeny tiny panels because there are so many like good, the action moments, the sequentialing of the action, but also that being interspersed with these like little reminders of what has come before. And you've talked about some of that, being scripting. Is creating those teeny tiny panels just a continuation of like following those impulses and trying to go with the flow and make quick and snappy decisions?
I think it's honestly, I would say it's more for smoother storytelling. Like
Mm,
it's more just about storytelling. And, it's just serving the story, like,
yeah.
or doing arbitrary shots that might evoke a mood and then getting back to the story. So, like, playing with expectations, giving readers enough input. I never ever want to be confusing. Like, I mean, if I was to fault my art, sometimes I might be like, I could be maybe a little, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's just an instinctual thing, and like we're just gripping it and ripping it, And Scott's given me that freedom to kind of add, subtract, do whatever I want. Like I really don't work. We don't do full scripts. I'm not given like a page layout with a panel layout. It's scenes and some dialogue beats, like really loosely placed in. We just like we probably don't even need scripts at this point. We talk so much every day, pretty much about the plots. The layouts are about just seeing what the real estate is and what's going to fit, and then adjusting to that. And like don't get me wrong, Scott's got this all mapped out, and I know point A to point B, but within point A and point B, say on a page, I can zigzag any way I want. So.
Are you running out of bat facts? This could be like bat seed bugs, and then he's like
No, I mean the hardest
punching a
thing
bunch
is
of
the
goons.
fight, ratcheting up the fight scene. So I
Yeah.
am like, and everyone, a lot of people are like, oh man, the decision to go brutal, and I'm kind of just like, I kind of think it's not really a decision at this point. This is kind of who Scott and I are as storytellers. Like if you read East to West, that was
Yeah.
brutal. If you've read Scott's work, it's brutal and horrific. Like it's just this is kind of in our DNA of who we are and how we like to tell stories. Like I lean more towards, splattering ink, which I think is way more effective than drawing every intestine and, you know, which is way less, but it seems to do something in the imagination that make you go, oof, that something bad just happened. So it's very
Yeah, and
fun.
I don't think any of it is gratuitous. I think the story is doing a great job of giving us who this Bruce is and how his version of his parents or his father's death has impacted him. And now with the conversation that the mom is having in this issue with him, Martha saying that, you know, you're wearing this pain like a cape. Um, but that also encourages you to embrace hope the way that your father embraced hope. Like I don't know, I feel like it's a whole piece that you're having, and the violence is necessary to that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's also reflective of like the world we live in, I think, too. We have gun violence in the country and not much seems to be done about it, you know. So like I like going back to issue 1 with the big silhouette of the handgun, and it's just an immediate reminder of like this is a violent world. There's no two ways about it. And yeah, this is cartoony violence, and it's you know, it's fun to push that aspect of it and remind people this is a comic book and the action is ridiculous. And then also I think too, like the punning of the kid, like we can have some levity, like we can laugh too and be like, yeah, it's Looney Tunes-esque at points. You know, so
Yeah. It's some of the most fun that we're having reading comics right now.
cool. I
Um,
mean, that's the goal, right?
yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for hanging out and talking Absolute Batman. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure speaking to you too.
And we did it. That is our Absolute Batman and Bane conversation with Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta. I love, Lisa, that the conversation around hope reared its head with Nick.
Yeah, we're always going to talk about themes. I cannot contain myself.
But I also think that it is important, and Scott and Nick remind us both that Batman is cool, Batman is fun, and part of Batman being awesome is the point.
Yeah. Yeah. It does make me defensive, though, every single time. Because they always make it go like, you're making it sound super serious.
Whoa, I don't think they ever say that.
We have to remind people that Batman is fun and awesome.
That is your defensive nature.
That is my
coming
defensive
through.
nature. And I just want to say being serious is fun
Yeah,
for some people.
But again, to go back to what Scott was saying about Batman being awesome is part of the mission too.
And part of his being aspirational.
Right.
Like you too can be awesome. Awesomeness is at your fingertips if you have the time and effort in you.
And what we are seeing in Absolute Batman is not the definitive version of Batman. We're actually not at the Absolute Batman stage. We are getting there.
Yeah.
There is an evolution that is being plotted, and I think that gets missed a lot in serialized comic storytelling. Again, as Scott said, the definitive version is the one that has been built over the course of 80 years and exists on the other side of the DC universe. While that is the absolute Batman, that's not our absolute Batman of this series.
You're saying like there is a platonic ideal of Batman that has yet to be captured in a comic?
No, I'm saying that version has been captured. That's the version that exists in all of us. That's the version that you see in the DC main continuity. That's not the version here. The version we're seeing in Absolute Batman is a Batman that's becoming Absolute Batman. And by that I mean the definitive peak performance Batman.
What you're not saying is that Absolute Batman is going to turn into the mainline Batman, because that's impossible.
No. They're
But
two different Batman.
They're two different Batman. One is Absolute Batman, as in the title, and one is the Absolute Batman, which is the mainline
peak
Batman.
Performance Batman that exists
At full maturation.
in the other timeline.
Okay, I'm following you now. Though I do think that there is an ineffable zeitgeist Batman that has yet to be. That's why we keep telling this story, because we're trying to get to that true, absolute Batman. Like the Batman in Absolute Batman, the title.
Yes.
Has more in common with Batman Year One Batman, where it's about the mistakes, it's about the refining.
It's growth.
It's about,
it's about growth. It's about becoming Batman.
So how are we going to know when Absolute Batman, the title, is going to be Absolute Batman, the concept?
I don't know.
It's going to be fun to find out.
It's like pornography. You know it when you see it.
Okay, I'm into it too. So yay.
That is going to do it for today's episode. As we teased in the introduction of this episode, we have another episode coming out this week on Wednesday. It is the conclusion of our Spectrum Book Club
This is
with
a special one.
creators Rick Quinn and Dave Chisholm.
Yay.
The end of a 6-month journey. I actually think it's been 7 months that we've been covering Spectrum on Comic Book Couples Counseling. We love it. We're sad to have it end, but it goes out with a bang, just like the series does. The final issue of Spectrum hits shops this Wednesday.
Yay, so you can read it and play along.
Yeah. And again, Absolute Batman, I probably should have said this also. The 9th issue, FOC, is today. So if you're listening to this episode on Monday, tell your shop you want it. You want to be there when the new Bane shows up.
Why are you not subscribed? That's weird.
That's what I said to Scott. I was like,
get on top of your stuff.
Like, is FOC that important for Absolute Batman? Everybody should be subscribed to Absolute Batman at their store. What else we got going on? So then next week, we'll tell you about that on Wednesday in our Spectrum Book Club episode. We also mentioned at the start of this episode our in-person comic book club that we're having at Meanwhile Coffee in Herndon, Virginia on June 8th at 4 o'clock. They are extending their hours to host our comic book club. You are invited, whether we've personally invited you or not. If you're hearing these words, you're invited. So come to Meanwhile Coffee on June 8th at 4 o'clock, and let's talk about Helen of Windhorn by Tom King and Bilquis Evely.
We are there to fill your love tanks.
Yeah.
We have gifts.
Yeah.
We'll give you words of affirmation.
Strawberry matcha coffees. It's new. It's at Meanwhile Coffee. Get yours and drink it while you talk about some comics.
Yeah, to me, that is a dream evening.
Yeah,
a
I'm
way to
excited.
spend a Sunday.
I'm
Amazing.
excited. I'm also nervous because, it's not like we have a sign-up sheet, so we really don't know how many people are going to come. It could just be me and Lisa, or it could be me and 500 of our closest friends.
I would love it. I would love to see you there.
That would be amazing. Let's set up a tent.
Can't get enough of us? Why not give us $1? You can listen to our brand new Married to Singles episode. This one is with one of my personal faves, yours too, Sarah Meyer. They're talking about The Duck Knight Returns, a Darkwing Duck comic. This is a deep dive, and it is so fun. Sarah is encyclopedic with their Darkwing Duck knowledge. I was just at their feet soaking it up because I didn't get Disney as a child.
And the reason Lisa's saying you got to give us $1 is because it's in our Patreon.
Oh, yeah, that's
feed.
right. I should have said that. Not just on the street.
Of course, we also have a free tier in our Patreon feed where we do our podcast series, Support Your Local Comic Shop. That is a series in which we talk to rad comic book retailers about what it's like to sell comics in 2025. The latest episode is with Katie Pride from Books with Pictures in Portland, Oregon.
Our next comic book film club at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester, Virginia will be James Gunn's The Suicide Squad on June 29th at 5 p.m. Tickets are not on sale yet, but should go up shortly. Co-sponsored, as always, by Four Color Fantasies, the Eisner-nominated comic book store.
Yeah, we're all building towards the Superman release on July 11th. On July 12th at the Alamo Drafthouse, we'll also be doing a comic book film club with Superman. And Tom King has told us he will either be there or he will give us a virtual introduction depending on his schedule.
How generous is that? That's very sweet of him.
Super cool, super cool.
Okay, Brad, I'm actually feeling a lot braver right now.
Okay.
I think I'm ready to go across the street.
Oh, no.
And get a Diet Coke.
Yeah, drink
that
John.
Says, oh, no.
Drink your brother.
I will not. But what if I put his ashes in there when he passed away? Where can our listeners send the words of affirmation to
You can find me on most social medias at MouthDork, although I'm spending most days on Blue Sky these days. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, send them to Jesse Lonergan at Jesse Lonergan on Blue Sky or on Instagram, Jesse.Lonergan. Lisa, where can our listeners send the words of affirmation to you?
I'm always accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on some social medias. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Apple Podcasts, or whatever app you choose. We're everywhere. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on all the socials at CBCC Podcast.
If you'd like us to touch you physically, you can wear our merch. tpublic.com/store/comicbookcouplescounseling.
You can give us the gift of stars. How about 5 of them
Only
on Audible
5. That's
or Apple
all
Podcasts?
we're open to. 5 stars.
And if you'd like to do an act of service, why not write a review or leave a comment on the show while you're there?
We are fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
So until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Doopy doopy bum bum ba bum bum ba ba.
Why, Brad?
That was a wild.
You wanted me to cue you up, but I mean, I can't do it in a natural fashion. Why?
No.
Why?
You're not acting.
I know. I'm not a good actor. We know this. Why, Brad? Why, Brad? Why? Why Bane? Why Bane? Stop it.
This is me.
Stop. Fucking stop.
No, you got to
You moused it.
resetting the edit.
Why, Brad? I can't do it.
Just say like, why?
Oh. Why? That one I did silly on purpose. Okay.